Welcome to today's YouTube episode where I'm going to be telling you all about my Vipassana 10-day silent retreat experience. I'm going to be sharing more about what I learned, why I went and embarked on this 10-day experience, meditating for 100 hours over the 10 days, and what I got from the experience, what I loved, and also a really honest sharing about what I didn't love about Vipassana. And I really want to take some time towards the end of the episode to create a lot of transparency. So if you're interested and you're watching this video because you want to go and do a 10-day Vipassana silent retreat yourself, I highly recommend watching until the end because it will give you a really real and transparent expectation about what the retreat is all about. And to be honest, I kind of wish that I knew this before I went in. It wouldn't have changed my decision. I still would have said yes, but it would have given me an idea of what to expect, an idea of how to prepare myself going into the 10 days of meditation and silence. So I went to the Esenggowenka Vipassana up in West Java, Jakarta in Indonesia. And I thought that the grounds or like the camp that we were staying was so beautiful. Like one thing that I loved about my experience was that it was out in the middle of the nature. It was so quiet. They had this huge creek that flowed through the side. And so every morning, every night, even when you were meditating, you could just hear the sound of the water gushing through the rocks in the river, and it was so calming and soothing. It was quite, a comfort to the experience when you're in meditation for 10 hours in like complete silence. So it was really beautiful where I went, and I would highly recommend if you're going to do Vipassana yourself, you find a center where it's quite like removed from the city. Because I just personally found that it was so beautiful being in nature. The reason why I decided to go to Vipassana was a few years ago, I heard about this meditation silent retreat from a friend of mine. And when they told me about this, I thought it was crazy. I was like, what? People go and meditate for 10 hours a day for 10 days in complete silence? Like, that's wild. That's crazy. Why would people do that? And initially, I really shrugged it off as this experience that was like too hard. And I had a lot of belief systems around, stress makes me work hard, and I work too hard to be in silence, and, sleep while you're dead, and no rest for the wicked, and all of these belief systems about being in stillness and why I just couldn't do that. And as I've gone through my own healing journey, I've realized that, well, a lot of my resistance to being in stillness is actually a resistance to what might arise through being in stillness. And when I say that, what I mean is like my pain, my sadness, stress. And no wonder I was so scared about being in 10 days of that, because I knew deep down that I wasn't prepared to sit with what was coming up for me. And so through my healing journey, I've realized that I've had more of this curiosity and interest to be in this meditation experience and try it. It was something that I put on my bucket list, and I highly recommend, if you don't have a bucket list, create one. It doesn't have to be about just visiting different, key tourist sites around the world. It can be experiences like 10 days of silence, where you're able to challenge yourself, like mentally and spiritually, to discover things about yourself that maybe in your day-to-day environment you're not able to because you're so stuck in your routines. And so for my journey, I knew that this year I wanted to take some time off work, prepare myself going into the 10 days of silence, and explore out of curiosity what was going to arise within those 10 days. And I can tell you straight away, before I start talking about what I learned, how it's, transformed me internally, mentally, that it was the most incredibly life-changing thing I've done. I would say that it's also the hardest thing that I've also experienced, not just during the 10 days, but after, through integration. It has been really challenging. But Vipassana is not just about meditation. A lot of people think that I'm just going to be like sitting in this meditative practice for 10 hours of the day for 10 days. Like, how hard could it be? Like, it is a mental marathon. Like, you're training, but then you're also experiencing the marathon at the same time. It requires so much hard work. And that's not a limiting belief, like saying that it will be hard. Like, no, you are going in to train your mind and essentially do a surgery on the disease that's happening within the framework of your mind, the framework within the body. And so as a surgeon, you're like going in and dissecting the mind, and that requires precision and hard work. And surgeons train for years and years to perform that kind of surgery. Like, a GP can't do that. And so essentially you're going through that same level of training within the 10 days. And every day felt like a year of therapy. Every day felt like a plant medicine experience. And the thing is, like, it is medicine. The medicine is revealed to you through the hard work. And so if you go in with the idea that it's going to be like bliss and easy and love and light, and you're just going to like come out as this enlightened being, well, you won't, because it requires, to get to that stage, like to reach that, you actually have to go through the framework of what Vipassana teaches. And so Vipassana is all about being able to learn from your suffering so that you may learn the art of living and see things for how they really are. And so when we're looking at attaining peace, attaining happiness, even attaining enlightenment, for someone who lives in a Western society, you don't have to be a monk to do that. But the pathway to that is not actually seeking enlightenment or seeking happiness as if we don't already have that. The pathway is by recognizing the aversions that we have to our own suffering that causes us to not be happy, to not feel loved, to not be at peace. And so what we're learning is not actually how to attain enlightenment per se, but it's more about how to understand that our attachment to happiness, our attachment to peace, our attachment to things that make us feel good or better is what causes the suffering. It causes us to not have that thing. And then, of course, our aversion to things that cause suffering, like sadness, pain, anger, grief, injustice, our aversion to those things, so the act of pushing those things away, running away from those things, burying them, hiding them in the deep parts of our childhood or our subconscious, again, is what causes our suffering. So the very act of pushing that thing away actually makes it come back towards us. And so it's like if you were to imagine a pendulum, right? A pendulum that swings. And I'll put a picture up on the screen so you can see what the pendulum is. If I am to pull the pendulum one way and let it go because I'm wanting to either move away from something, eventually it will swing back the other way and create a force that's equal to as far as I pull it. And vice versa. If I then am pushing the pendulum the other way, it will create a force as equal to that. And so whenever we're pushing something away from us through our thoughts, particularly ones that are bad or negative or don't feel good, what happens is we're actually creating that force as equal to the amount that we push it away that comes straight back at us in the form of suffering. And we do this with our thoughts all the time. People are burying their thoughts by craving the feeling of wanting to feel better. We do this through alcohol, we do it through food, we do it through our scrolling, we do this through temporary pleasures like binge watching Netflix and TV. And so these things might make us feel better temporarily, but they don't actually teach you how to deal with the root cause of what's happening in the mind, right? What's causing your your sadness, what's causing your depression, your anxiety. It teaches you how to numb it and self-soothe it temporarily, but it doesn't teach you what to do with it long term. So Vipassana helps you to realize the suffering within the mind, and then the technique teaches you how to observe it without attachment so that it may gently pass away. It may gently begin to let go of itself. So it's a really powerful technique, like incredibly powerful. And not just because of the technique that's taught, but because of the environment you're in. So within the 10 days, you take what's called the noble silence. Now, in noble silence, you're not able to talk to people for the 10 days. You're also not able to make eye contact with people. So you have to look at the ground. You're not able to look at the other students. You're also not able to make gestures, so like hand gestures or like signal to people if you need something. There was this really cute cat in Bali, it's called kucing. There was this cute kucing, and all I wanted to do was like pat it. And we also had to abstain from physical contact with any being. So we couldn't touch the cat, we couldn't touch each other. And so it's a complete disconnection with the people around you and also from the outside world. So you have to hand in your phone and any other electronic devices. There's no journaling, there's no writing, there's no reading. There's zero stimulation or contact with anything except for your own body and your own thoughts and your own feelings. And so the nature of the environment is designed to amplify the sensations that you're experiencing in your mind, your emotions, and your body, so that you're not looking for things outside of you to distract you. And then finally, you're asked to not do any other forms of practices like yoga, any other techniques of meditation, breath work, and of course like prayer. If you're somebody who's religious, or even, someone who's really spiritual and you like, calling on your higher self and your spirit guides, they ask you to completely abstain from that as well, so that you can give the technique of Vipassana like the full attention and justice that it really requires for the 10 days. And so the schedule for the 10 days, you wake up at 4 a.m. between 4 and 4:30. You are able to, get up, have a shower if you need, get ready, get dressed, and then head to the meditation hall. From 4:30 until 6:30, there's an optional meditation. Now, when I say optional, there were certain times through the day where we could either meditate in our room or meditate in the Dharma hall. And I personally found that after the first day, trying to meditate in my room was so difficult. Like being concentrated and being focused and not wanting to fall asleep was too difficult doing it in my room. And I was like, you know what, I came here to work hard, not sleep, not rest. So I chose during those like optional meditations to go to the hall in the morning and then also during the day and the evening. And the morning meditations were pretty tricky because at that stage you hadn't had any coffee, you're just waking up, and that 2-hour meditation block was actually quite challenging. From 6:30 until 8, we then have breakfast. So you have breakfast in the hall, you wash your dishes, and then you've got also optional time to shower, clean your room, sweep up. And then we had our first group sitting of meditation in the Dharma hall. So 3 times a day, we had our 1 hour of group sitting, and these were compulsory. You had to be in the Dharma hall during that full hour and you couldn't leave. And I really loved these hour sittings because everyone was in the room. Like people who wanted to meditate in their own rooms during the other times of the day, they had to be there at that time. And so energetically, everyone was very intentionally like being there to meditate. And if you ever opened your eyes and like had a look at other people, like every little cushion has somebody sitting there. And so like the energy was a lot just like different, and I found a lot better with the hour seating meditations. From there, we then had 9 till 11, our optional meditation, whether you want to be in your room or back in the hall. And then from 11 till 1, we had lunch and rest. And during those times, people would like walk around after lunch. They like look at the nature and just like watch the river and the beautiful water. That's when you're like really have that opportunity and time to do your washing. From 1 till 2:30, we then had another optional meditation. And then 2:30 to 3:30, our second group meditation. 3:30 till 5, our optional meditation again. 5 until 6 was a short dinner, so an hour dinner and then a little bit of a break between that time. And then back in the hall for our final group seating from 6 till 7. And then my final part of the day was what was called discourse. Now discourse was from 7 to 8:15. And during this hour and 15 minutes, we went into a different hall to watch a discourse or a training video from SN Goenka. And during those trainings, every single night, we would learn about Vipassana. We would learn about the teachings of Buddha and the path to enlightenment. And what I really loved about this was SN Goenka, he wasn't a guru, he wasn't a Buddha. And so he was a common householder. And so you're learning a really advanced Buddhist teaching, but it's being taught by one of his students who was a common householder. And so he's not teaching you that you need to be a Buddha or that you need to be a guru or a nun in order to become enlightened, or at least follow the path of Dharma to enlightenment, to live a noble life like Buddha did. And so I found that was really beautiful, watching him every night and listening to him talk about the path of what Buddha taught and how to live a life of compassion and live in a life in peace and in harmony. So these were really, really beautiful. It was also like an opportunity to just like hear someone talk. And of course, you know, what they're sharing is so pure and so, so beautiful. So I absolutely love discourse. And then we were back in the meditation hall. I know, meditate for another sitting until 9 p.m. And then from there, we had the option to do a Q&A with the teacher one-on-one, or go back to your rooms and go to bed. Now the Q&A, they set up as an opportunity so that if you were really struggling or unsure of how to navigate something that you were feeling, something you were experiencing, that you had the opportunity to meet with another student of SN Goenka and ask the teacher, like very quietly, what your question was in that one-on-one space. So I found that was really helpful. There were a few days where I really struggled and I needed that reassurance that I was on the right path. And so that was super comforting to know that during the 10 days that there was support if I needed it. So now let me dive into what I actually learned during the 10 days. The first thing that I started to realize was that I had this part of me that was like super obsessed and concerned about what I was wearing and how I looked compared to the other women that I was with. So in Vipassana, they separate the men and the women, and you're not able to have contact with the opposite sex. And for some reason, I had this huge awareness of this part of me that was so concerned about what I was wearing. And I kept telling myself, like the first 2 days, like, Nikki, it's not a fashion show. Why are you so obsessed with what you're wearing? And I was looking at all the other girls, and some of them had such pretty pants on, and they had these pretty kimonos and really beautiful, colorful like dresses. I just had these beige linen pants and top. I was like, I'm going full monk style. Like, I just want to wear like really simple clothes. Like, who cares what I'm wearing? But when I was there, this part of me was like, oh my God, maybe you should have worn something pretty. Maybe everyone's going to think you were trying to wear like clothes to look like a monk. And I realized that I was like, oh my gosh, this part of me is so relentless and obsessed with my self-image. And I realized that it was actually like quite a big problem that I was first starting to recognize within my mind. So like that was the first piece of my impurity of my mind that they teach, which is noticing impurities of the mind that I had. I was like, whoa, this is a really big impurity of mine, because it's not that wanting to wear certain clothes is bad. It was like this obsession and this aversion that I had to feeling like what I was wearing was not good enough. So I kept telling myself, Nikki, like, it's not a fashion show. And I got to like the end of day 3 and I was like, right, this needs to stop, Nikki. Like, clearly there's a really big lesson in here that you're learning about your obsession with your self-image. And so what I started to do was stop looking in the mirrors. And I found that over the days, it really, really helped. I stopped worrying about what I was wearing. I stopped comparing myself to the other meditators. And I stopped creating this obsession about how I looked. And I could really then start to work hard on enjoying my technique. And then also between the technique sessions, when we're going for walks and we're resting and we're in the whole eating, I was enjoying just like being in my body, being in my own energy, and actually enjoying my space rather than worrying so much. So the first thing I realized was like, wow, I have a big part of me that worries. She's like such a big warrior when it comes to what I'm wearing compared to the people around me. I felt like I had a lot of shame around that. I was like ashamed that I was feeling that way. And I realized that throughout the days, particularly around day 6 or 7, I caught these little glimpses of myself in the mirror. And keep in mind, like my intention was to stop looking in the mirror. And so when I caught these little glances of myself in the mirror, I had these really profound feelings of like seeing myself for how I truly was. And it was beautiful because I saw this shift from a part of my ego that when I saw myself, her first motive was to look a certain way and feel that I should look a certain way, to just accepting how I was and accepting myself, not for how I want it to be, but for who I truly was. And that became a huge motto for me throughout the 10 days, not just in how that I looked, but also how I was feeling through my meditations with my thoughts and my feelings. So my motto was accept it for how it is, not how you would like it to be. Accept it for how it is, not how you would like it to be. And as I started to reaffirm that, then this huge wave of acceptance around my self-image began to really heighten and really increase. And I still maintained my intention of creating that boundary with the mirrors. But anytime I caught that glimpse, I just felt this pure beauty. And on the 10th day, when you're allowed to break your noble silence and begin communication with each other, when I made eye contact with the other women, oh my gosh, all I saw was this complete beauty in all of these women that were looking back at me. Like I wanted to cry because all I felt was complete love and beauty for these women that I was connecting with. And I wasn't in my head worrying about, wow, she's so beautiful. I wish I had nice hair like her. And wow, her skin's so clear. And oh, if only I had skin that was that clear. And wow, her clothes are so pretty. Oh, maybe if I had nice clothes like that, then yeah, I would, have more people that would like me. Like all of that dissolved. And I was just like experiencing this deep, profound love and gratitude for these women that I was connecting with on that final day. And of course, with myself. The next thing that I really loved about Vipassana was sitting with suffering. Now, like even just saying that, I can hear there's a part that's like, why would you like that? And the point is because we've been taught to run away from our suffering. We've been taught from the framework of our brain that we're designed to move away from pain. And a lot of that is what causes our suffering, is that a lot of us, we don't know how to sit with sadness. And we are told that having feelings like anger is bad, when in reality, there's a full spectrum of emotions that we experience as a human being. And if you want to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be a human, it also then means allowing yourself to feel emotions of every color and every sensation, including pain, anger, sadness, and grief. From like day 2, it began really early for me. I was experiencing a lot of sadness and there was a lot of tears. Like that was a lot of crying in the first 3 days. And at one point, I had to actually leave the meditation hall, and luckily this was through one of the optional meditation sessions. So I could actually leave the hall, and one of the student teachers came up to me and said, you early bird, most people don't experience this level of sadness until later throughout the course. And I realized that it was like a lot of sadness that I was like holding on to. I was like making up my sadness. And I would go back to the room and I would still be feeling sad. And I realized, like, Nikki, you're not meditating anymore. Like, that was 20 minutes ago when you were feeling that way. Why are you still holding on to your sadness? And I had these huge realizations about my sadness, my anger, and my trauma, that even as the moment passed, even though it wasn't real for me in the present moment, like it didn't exist, there was nothing to be sad about, there was nothing happening to make me feel sad, that I still had a part of me that wanted to hold on to the sadness. And I realized that the relationship that I had with my sadness, my pain, my trauma, that I was creating a lot of victimization around it and holding on to it, like making it my sadness, my pain, and essentially amplifying those feelings. And so when we are taught the technique of not judging these sensations and not judging what's arising within the mind and the body, just allowing them to be and observe them from an outside perspective, they gently pass away, or like you're gently able to let go of them. It's only when we then cling to them, we hold on to them, we make it mean these things about ourselves, and we create this story about it, my anger, my sadness, my pain, that we then make it a part of our identity, and the ego clings onto it. But when we are learning the technique of non-judgmental observation, we just notice it objectively as it is, not how we would like it to be. It's then able to gently pass away. And so all these impurities of the mind, like our defilements that cause our anger, cause our sadness, cause our suffering, we're able to just observe them just as an emotion, observe them just as a thought, or observe them just as a sensation in the body, and then they are gently able to pass away. And so the saying that was taught to us over and over was anicca, anicca. And if you've done Vipassana, you've probably heard that word 100 times, but what that means is everything is impermanent. And so we learn to create a relationship with our deepest pain, our deepest sadness, the deepest causes of our suffering, like our traumas, and learn to observe them as they are, not how we would like them to be. And then they are able to dissipate, they are able to pass away, they are able to dissolve. That was a really, really powerful breakthrough that I had, particularly on like the second day. I had a big awareness around my sadness. The third day, a big trauma from my past and my childhood arose. And then towards later and the end of the course, I had this experience where I saw my mum die. I had to confront my suffering with losing her and my pain and my grief of losing my mom. And again, learn how to come to terms with that. Now, I don't want to scare anyone who's listening to this and they're like, what the hell? Like, I do not want to do that. By then, I had learned so much about the equanimity and the power of this meditation experience that I was able to handle that. And towards the end of this video, I'm going to be teaching you more about the other side of Vipassana and why it's really important that you know these things before you go into the experience. But the nature is that when you are in a complete state of silence and stillness, there will be memories, there will be flashbacks, there will be flash forwards, there will be emotions, there will be so many random things from your childhood that you may experience. And they are going to induce these things within you so that you may learn how to purify your mind. This is not a 10-day retreat where you just go in and relax and come out feeling like a monk who's like meditated in bliss and harmony for 10 days. No, like it's hard work. It's really, really hard work. So like that might sound really crazy when you hear that, I was experiencing severe pain and my trauma and sadness and, anxiety. But for me, like on the other side of it, it was really powerful and quite profoundly beautiful because of what I learned being able to sit with those things, and that I was able to sit with those emotions and learn how to deal with the suffering that comes from either wanting to push those experiences away, run away from them, and our aversion to them, and then the clinging and craving to things that make us feel better so that we're not feeling those things. And so when we're learning how to tolerate them, we're expanding our window of tolerance, not just for hard things, but expanding our window of tolerance for our sadness, for our anger, for our grief, for our pain, and not allowing them to have control over us. And we are learning how to become a witness to them. We're seeing them from an outside perspective as they are, not how we would like them to be. I then also realized since coming back from my 10 days of silence that because of all of this like mental tough training, that I have such a high tolerance for pain and suffering and really hard things right now. So before going to Vipassana, I would go to this like health and recovery club called Nirvana here in Bali. And I would do the cold plunges, and I would get in for like 30 seconds and be like, okay, I gotta get out. Whereas now I can get in and I find this really beautiful place of equanimity and calmness and peace. And I find this like happy place in the suffering of the cold water, where my mind used to be like, get out, it's freezing, you're gonna die. I'm now finding this really like sweet spot of solitude and peace. And it's really, really quite interesting how my tolerance for pain has literally increased like 300%. And it's because I learned the technique of equanimity. So the equanimity is a technique they teach in Vipassana, and it teaches you that when you're in these moments of the suffering of your mind or the impurities of your mind, how to come back to either your breath with the anapana or back to the present sensations of the body. And again, just observing them as they are objectively. And so you're not in the mind of like, I'm cold, I'm in pain, get out. And the mind is now becoming control of you. You are able to be in control of your mind and experience like this inner peace, like state of harmony. And this technique of equanimity isn't just good for, physical pain and enduring ice baths, but also for now being able to experience things that are happening in my life that are going to be hard. Like, because here's the reality is like, we will all experience death around us at some stage. We will all experience things that will be challenging, stresses, heartbreak, traumas, griefs, pain. And having the ability and the tool to access something like equanimity in a moment of distress is really powerful. So when you're feeling anxious or you're feeling depressed, that you're actually able to find your way through that darkness and find the light, essentially. And so I really know that in the years to come, as I'm experiencing these things that are happening outside of me, that inside I'm able to navigate through the darkness and find the light through those situations, find myself again with love, acceptance, peace, and harmony. And that's really, really powerful. Another really beautiful lesson that I got from my 10 days was anything that you do with your full attention becomes so pleasurable. So it was quite funny that like throughout the 10 days, more and more people started to realize that observing nature after being in a long seating of meditation almost elicits like a plant meditation experience. We would come out of these like long sittings of meditation, and you're in this like really, really intensified state of mindfulness, and observing the nature around you becomes like euphoric. I saw myself at one point crouched down, and there was this caterpillar that was half in a cocoon, and it was trying to get to higher ground so that maybe, I'm assuming, it could like fully wrap itself around this cocoon and, become a butterfly. And all I wanted to do was intercept. I just wanted to like pick up this butterfly, or I should say caterpillar, and like carry him to a little like leaf on a branch so that he could like hang himself and like develop fully into a butterfly. And I just kept thinking, Nikki, observe things as they are, not how you would like them to be. And so I'm just like crouched down on the floor for like 30 minutes, just staring at this butterfly, like just looking at him crawl. So looking at this caterpillar crawl through the grass, like just trying to get to the tree. And I was just observing myself as I was observing this butterfly, and how hard I was like trying to work to surrender and just let him be, let nature take its course. Just observing this caterpillar became like this full sensory pleasurable experience of awakenings and insights. And for most people, like they would probably walk past the caterpillar and not even see it. Some people might walk past and like step on it and just like end his life for no reason. And so anything that you do with your full attention, like your full sensory attention, becomes so profound and so illuminating, and there is so much to learn in the nature around us. Vipassana, it means the art of living. And so we're learning the art of living beings in everything around us, in people, in nature, in animals, in the tiniest of insects that we might think are so insignificant and have no real value in this life. We learn so much when we're able to just observe them in a complete state of harmony, equanimity, and truth. The truth of what it is, not how we want it to be or what we think it is based off our conditioning. Okay, so I want to tell you about the other side of Vipassana. Now, this is really important because I've already had so many incredible women reach out to me on my Instagram and ask me, like, what was your experience? I'm interested in Vipassana. Like, why did you go? And for all of you watching, or if you came here to learn more about the experience to prepare for your Vipassana, I really encourage you to listen to this final section of the video, because coming out of the experience and integrating what I've learned, I realized that I really needed to know this before going in. And I realized that there is a lot of students who probably done Vipassana and don't know this and are really missing this really key, important piece. Now, before I talk about that, it's so important to start with letting you know that the technique will induce suffering. Like they say this on the website, they're pretty transparent about that. And it's important to iterate is that you should not go into the experience if you're looking for a 10-day wellness retreat. You should not go into the experience if you're looking for a 10-day rest and break from your reality or your stresses of your life. You will have to work hard to navigate through your suffering. That's not a limiting belief, and that's not me scaring you. It's me being really honest and helping you to realize what to expect through the 10 days. I also realized that for people who are new to this experience, that there was a lot of travelers who are looking for, things to experience traveling the world. Obviously, meditation retreats kind of sound appealing to travelers and people who are wanting to experience these really, profound things. But if you've never experienced what it's like to go through the dark night of your soul and have an ego death and do any kind of shadow work, you will really struggle in this experience if you don't know how to be your own guide. What that means is like having a part of you as you're going through suffering that's able to reassure you that you're in a safe space, that you're here because you chose to do something that will challenge you to grow, but also that the technique is medicine. The medicine is working, and like saying these reassuring things that are going to help you get through the experience. Because I can tell you right now, if I didn't have that part of me that I've developed through my years of inner healing and what I teach women now, which is to heal themselves, I would have really struggled. And unfortunately, I did see that there were a lot of travelers, and this is not a bad thing, but I couldn't help but feel through my integration after Vipassana, like, wow, they must be struggling not having these things and not being able to reassure themselves that their dark night of the soul was actually a part of the healing and that it was the medicine that was working. So, for example, when we look at plant medicine and people go in and have what's called like a bad trip, they're not actually experiencing a bad trip. They're actually getting what they need. The plant's working. They just don't know how to navigate through that. They don't know how to let go of control. They don't know how to surrender. They don't know what it feels like. And this is something they've never, ever experienced before. So it's so foreign for them to even comprehend that they might be having a potential ego death. They're going through the valley of despair or the hero's journey of their death and rebirth cycle. They're experiencing this inner death. And instead of going, I'm going through this death and rebirth experience, and on the other side, I'm birthing a new version of myself, they go, oh my God, I'm experiencing this death and this is horrible. How do I get out? I want to leave. And so what happens is on day 2 and on day 6, there is a lot of people that leave Vipassana. And oh my gosh, I couldn't help again but think so much compassion for them, because they then are leaving this experience feeling like they've probably failed. And again, not knowing these things that they can tell themselves to reassure them, to guide them, to help them, to nurture them, to hold them compassionately with loving arms through this experience. And so you can imagine, if you don't have that perspective that what you're learning is medicine and the medicine is working, and that this too shall pass, and that all of this is a teacher, all of this is a lesson for you, happening for you, for your growth, for your healing, for your expansion. Like, nobody likes to drink medicine. Like when we were little children and our parents would give us a spoonful of medicine. Nowadays they put sugar syrup in it, right? But back then it was sort of like, ugh. But we knew we had to take the medicine for us to get better. It's like when you go to the doctors and you get your injection. No one likes getting stabbed in the arm with a needle, but it's what the doctor gives you as medicine to either prevent you from getting sick or to make you better. I do feel that there's not enough transparency leading into the experience about what you're going to experience. It will feel like an ego death. You will go through the dark night of the soul. And that's not to scare you, but it's actually there for your path of healing. So that as you go through your mental impurities, that's when you let go of them. That's when you like digest them and they're released from the body, released from the mind. You can't go into the 10 days thinking that it's just going to be peace and harmony and love for the full 10 days. You can, but you won't actually get anything from the experience. Sort of like what the gym bros say, like no pain, no gain. That's exactly what this experience will be like. If you're going in wanting to make the experience only peaceful and not painful at all, you're not actually going to experience the growth on the other side of that. Another thing that I really want to emphasize if you're preparing for your own Vipassana retreat is to treat it like a marathon. Could you imagine rocking up to a marathon, not training, not eating any healthy food, drinking alcohol, taking drugs, not really like sleeping well, and then having to run a marathon for 10 days? That's the experience that I see a lot of meditators having when they come into Vipassana. So I spoke to a lot of students before and after, and I realized that there were a lot of people that didn't prepare themselves for Vipassana. And I did a lot of preparation for Vipassana. And there were a lot of people that asked me, like, Nikki, you were so still in your meditations. Like, Nikki, you were so good at sitting still. How did you navigate that? And the reality is like, I prepared for Vipassana. I stopped drinking alcohol leading up to the 10 days. I pulled back on my really intense training sessions. I was doing meditation every day just for 20 minutes. But I was still, sitting in stillness, preparing my mind, preparing my hips to be in that seated position, and preparing myself to expect stillness. My partner and I, Ryan, we weren't going to partying. Like, we don't really do that anyways, but we weren't going out to clubs, we weren't going out to bars, we weren't in environments where there's lots of noise, lots of stimulus, lots of happening. Think of your nervous system as like this tolerance for stressful things happening outside of you through your senses, what you can see, hear, smell, taste, and feel. If there's 100,000 things coming at you all the time because you're such a stimulated person, you always have to be doing something, you're always going to be working, you're always going to be seeing people, you're always going to be out, you're always going to be drinking, you're always going to be on your phone, and then to go from complete nothingness, no phone, no drinking, no partying, no talking, no people, nothing, that's going to be a really big jump for your nervous system. It will be quite destabilizing. And what will happen is it will create quite an intense reaction within the nervous system. The nervous system is going to go, what the hell? What's going on? This feels really foreign. This feels really disorientating. And so going into that experience, which is hard enough as it is, you then have to also navigate self-regulating your nervous system. Now, luckily, you're meditating every day, so you've got like the perfect opportunity for that. But your nervous system will still create heightened thoughts, feelings, like an internal chaos. It's not just about the physical body, it's also what's happening internally as well. And then also on the reverse side of that, leaving Vipassana, your integration is just as important. So again, considering how the nervous system reacts to such a sudden change in stimulus from our outside environment, if we then go from our 10 days of complete stillness to then, I'm going to party, I'm going to, do all the things I couldn't do in the 10 days, I'm going to see all my friends and tell them about the experience and how enlightened I am, and, go shopping and all of these things, you're then taking your nervous system from a really calm state where it's in this window of tolerance of peace and love and happiness and calm and collected, to then fight or flight, because it's now having a sensory overload of information too fast, too soon. So if you've booked in to do Vipassana or you're interested in doing it, I highly recommend for at least 2 days after, go book yourself in somewhere really nice. Like, it doesn't have to be bougie, but somewhere that's calm and quiet, like a hotel where you maybe get like in-hotel massage and stay in your room and maybe go for little walks and come back, and little walk and come back and be in the silence, to like honestly readjust your nervous system back to normal life. This was something that I did after Vipassana, and I still felt this resistance to being back in normal life. When I came back for the first week after Vipassana, I spent a lot of my time here in this villa bedroom. And there were times where I would just be outside in our villa kitchen and doing a call, and all I felt like doing was crying. And I was like feeling guilty because I just learned all these techniques and not being attached to my sadness and not being attached to my suffering. And yet I was feeling all this sadness, and so it was really confusing. And then as my nervous system started to regulate, I realized, Nikki, like, this is your nervous system. You know this stuff, you teach it. I was very fortunate because I know this work, which is the way talking about the lens of neuroscience here, that I had these resources and tools daily post Vipassana to help my nervous system come back online. And I can imagine there will be so many people coming out of this experience and feeling super offline, feeling super lost because they're not able to help their nervous system recalibrate back to its homeostasis. So important. If you are doing Vipassana, please make sure you treat your integration just as important as the actual 10 days itself. Work hard to integrate what you're learning, not just the theory of it, but the practice of it. And that does require you regulating your nervous system. You're in the perfect environment during that 10 days to regulate it, but when you're back in your normal life, in your normal environment, it's very easy to slip back into your old habits and just go back to normal and pretend like everything's normal again. If you do that, you will experience a lot of dissociation with your nervous system, a lot of feelings of overwhelm and feeling like you're stuck in these fight or flight states, and then feeling like you're stuck in your dissociated freeze collapse states. So I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. If you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, that's me, I've just done Vipassana and I'm feeling this way and I need help, or I'm about to go into Vipassana and I'd like some support to integrate everything after, send me a message. I do once-off deep dive sessions. I can support you through your integration. I can give you some guidance, give you some mentoring, help you to see what you're experiencing is super, super normal, but also that there are ways that you can come back into your window of tolerance, back into your equanimity, back into your heart, back into your body, back into that inner peaceful state. So prepare your nervous system going into this experience for complete stillness, and also prepare your nervous system coming out of this experience for activation. And I'd recommend doing this by finding like little pockets of stillness leading up to the experience. So not just during your 10-20 minute meditation in the morning, but also during the day and in the afternoon, especially like the week leading up, finding just like 20 minutes to just sit down and no phone, no work, just being with yourself. Of course, like I'd also recommend stop drinking and definitely stop taking drugs like at least a week if you can leading into it. I know everyone's really different and everyone has different preferences. This is just something that I would do if that was something that I was like taking. I would really consider doing that detox a little bit earlier before going in. Of course, like meditate if you can, seated on the floor leading up to Vipassana, at least a week again. I did a lot of hip opening stretches as well, sitting on the floor with your feet together and the knees out to really open up the hips. And I found that really helped me through the 10 days. And then finally, learn how to be your own guru and mentor. Learn how to be your own guru and mentor. Remember those things that I was saying before, is like, this too shall pass. The medicine is working. You are safe. You can do this. Like those things are super reassuring. And that saying of accept things as they are, not how you would like them to be. I felt that just me telling myself that helped me get through some really difficult times. And I've developed that part of me, almost like it's like a little voice that sits on your shoulder and whispers really nice things into your ear to reassure you everything's going to be okay. See if you can develop a part of you like that, like your little guru that can sit on the shoulder. And leading up to Vipassana, anytime you notice some fear-based thinking, or anytime you notice a part of you is like, oh, you can't do it, you're going to fail, it'll be too hard, this isn't for people like you, like say nice things to yourself to reassure and encourage you to develop positive thinking, to develop your own inner peaceful thinking. And then the last thing I kind of want to talk about is that I recognize Vipassana isn't really for people who are really struggling with alcohol and drugs. This technique is really powerful. However, because the 10 days you have absolutely no access to intoxicants, for someone who maybe wants to do Vipassana but they struggle to not drink or take drugs, you would have to do an intervention of rehab first before going into Vipassana. And even still, you do have to go through an extensive application process and be accepted into the course. So there's a chance that you might not actually get accepted. So that's what I don't like about the course, is that it is so intense that it wouldn't be appropriate for somebody who's experiencing that. I do personally feel for somebody who is maybe wanting to quit alcohol or quit taking drugs, I do personally feel that the framework of Vipassana is just not a safe enough space to facilitate that. I have heard stories of people going in who are alcoholics or drug addicts, and they end up getting sober in the 10 days. And that's so incredible. Like, that's so powerful. Power to you. However, I personally feel that it's not a safe space for somebody who's like really detoxing and going through rehabilitation through drugs or alcohol. So I just feel in that case, like, that it's not appropriate for everyone, and that these people really need interventions for sobriety first. Overall, I really want to come back to how much I loved Vipassana. There is a lot that I shared there as a preparation for people who are going into Vipassana, so that they can actually get a serious, real, and transparent expectation about what to expect. I would say, obviously, expect the unexpected, go in with no expectations, but it's important that you have the transparency of what the experience is going to be like. It's not a retreat. It's not a place to go and rest and relax. It's not a place to escape your reality and to find a spiritual breakthrough. It is about being able to go through the full journey of the suffering, of the death and rebirth, of the dark night of the soul, through the valley of despair, so that you can learn what's been actually holding you back from achieving breakthrough, achieving happiness, peace, enlightenment. So it's not actually the path of following and attaching to those things, it's learning what's been holding you back from that in the first place. And that will be hard work. So would I go back and do it again? Yes, I would. But because I have so much trust in myself to navigate that, to go through those things and also come out of the other side of it and integrate those lessons, so I can create that ascension in my healing this way rather than this way, and coming out of it and being like, oh my God, I've got all these, impurities of my mind. Oh my gosh, I'm recreating my past karmas, and actually going in a downward spiral. I would obviously highly recommend to people who've watched this YouTube video now or listen to my podcast and they're like, yep, okay, that's something that I feel I'm ready to be challenged by. Please reach out to me if you have done a Vipassana and you'd like some support, or you're about to go in for your experience and you would like to do a session with me. You can either leave a comment below, or you can reach out to me directly by Instagram. I'll leave those details in the show notes. I just want to thank you all so much for watching this update on my Vipassana experience. It's been 3 weeks now since I've gone into the experience, and I really felt like I needed all of that time to process. I realized that there were certain things about Vipassana that, for example, they didn't teach, and I really wanted to speak on that, and I was struggling to find the words to explain that in a way that landed and felt really safe, but also didn't throw shade on Vipassana. I still think Vipassana is a very, very powerful technique and a very powerful tool, and so I wanted to make sure that I was creating a transparent space so that I wasn't creating just like this biased video on how great it is and everyone should go do it, and there not being a realistic expectation about that. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's YouTube video. Please hit the subscribe button wherever it is on the screen. Hit the like button, leave me a comment if you are interested, if you learned anything about this, if you've done your Vipassana and you're back and you're trying to integrate, let me know. Leave me a comment below. I would love to hear from you. And of course, I will see you in the next video. But until then, I hope you all experience peace, love, and happiness.